Hi, and welcome to another video. I'm Dr. Cheryl Hurst, a postdoctoral research fellow with the Center of Employment Relations, Innovation and Change at the University of Leeds. Today I'm going to be talking to Felix Schulz, who is a doctoral candidate in the Work and Employment Relations Division at the University of Leeds. He's also a postdoctoral research fellow with the Digital Futures at Work Research Center. His PhD research investigates intra-workplace pay inequality and the development of trust employees have in their managers. His research responds broadly to the question, in times of high and further growing pay inequality, how does pay dispersion affect the trust we have in managers? His work takes an interdisciplinary approach, drawing on a social, psychological, industrial relation, and labor economic lens. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Felix's first publication, published with Andy Charlwood and Donat Valizade, also at the University of Leeds. Hi Felix, thanks for joining us. So I've just finished your introduction, but I didn't add that we used to share an office together. So for anybody watching, Felix and I used to cause mayhem in our office during our PhDs. So it's quite nice to be able to do this video. So to start the video, I just want to ask Felix, can you give a brief summary of your paper for an academic but non-specialized audience?
I'll do my best. I mean, the starting point for us was to look at the rising income inequality. I mean, most people are aware that since the 70s in developed countries, income inequality has been increasing. And this has been linked to decreasing levels of trust. So in more and more societies, people trust each other less and have less trust in government because income inequality has been increasing. And we are interested to see whether similar findings also hold on the workplace level, because a significant amount of this inequality actually stems from inequality increases in workplaces. And trust is very important for both employee outcomes such as satisfaction, well-being, but also for workplace outcomes such as performance. So what we did is we took a very quantitative approach. Whoever reads the title of the paper will definitely see it. And we took survey data representative of all UK workplaces, and next to traditional techniques used some machine learning algorithms. And on the one hand, we found that the relationship is not as straightforward as on the country level, where it was negative, but for us, we found it's non-linear, following inversely U-shape, so almost like a hump shape. Meaning at low levels of inequality, any increase leads to more trust. So actually, inequality can be good for trust. However, once it passes a threshold, which we identified at a Gini coefficient of 0.3, to put this into perspective, the lowest level of inequality is 0.28 in Sweden. And after this, it decreases, meaning that any increase in inequality leads to lower level of trust in managers. So we try to then understand is why is this the case? And the core argument is that people don't actually care about inequality, but you and me, we care about fairness. When is inequality fair and when is it unfair? When does the person next to you, when he or she earns more, when is it justified and when isn't it justified? So then we looked into perceived manager fairness. When do I, as an employee, feel to be fairly treated by my managers? And we found that this is actually the link between income inequality and trust. At low levels, we feel that any increase in inequality might be actually fairer, and when it gets too high, any increase will be unfair. And lastly, we said, okay, no relationship is really universal, right? I mean, we're talking about human beings at the workplace, and people differ, and organizational aspects differ. So then we said, okay, we look at labor unions and collective bargaining agreements, because through them, in academia, we know it, we have collective bargaining, there are pay scales, so actually there is some transparency, then we know how much other people might earn. Also, if there are disputes, if we are unsatisfied, we can go to our union, they help with us to communicate with management, and through that they are somehow able to establish procedural fairness. So when inequality is there, you and I, we should feel at least the procedures are fair, so we are more likely to be treated fairly. And what we found actually is employees in workplaces with a higher share of collective bargaining feel they are more fairly treated, and the effect of inequality on trust is more positive. However, again, once inequality becomes too big, too large, then the effect decreases.
Right, so what's the main contribution of your paper then? What didn't we know before?
On the one hand, I think it's threefold. On the one hand, we didn't know how inequality relates to trust on the workplace level. It has never been done before, this type of relationship. So now we know there is a relationship and it's not very straightforward. It really depends on how high the level of inequality is. Then secondly, for practitioners, of course, I mean, knowing that we have to watch out for inequality. It very much depends. Inequality can be positive, can be negative, but we have to look at which level we are currently. And I think most importantly is also the methodological contribution. Had we not used machine learning algorithms, the relationship that we found would have been a positive one. And of course, that means the implications drawn for theory and practice would have been completely different. If we had found it's only positive, then managers would have said, great, let's just have more inequality, pay ourselves more, and trust even will be better afterwards, which is not the case. So using these advanced techniques helped a lot. And lastly, of course, knowing that it's not inequality per se, but it's very much about how people perceive inequality. And that unions, which are usually portrayed as an institution that kind of tries to, as management likes to put it, stir discontent, is actually some institution that can be positive for trust in managers. Meaning management, if you work together with unions, actually the outcome can be positive for you and employees can trust you more.
That is definitely something that I noticed with the paper, and I think Human Relations as a journal has really been trying to be really creative with their methods and methodologies. And of course, I'm familiar with your work and Andy's and Danat's, but I think that the methods was really interesting. And what you've just said about if you hadn't used that particular model, you would have had different implications. I think that's a really interesting way to do scholarship and to look at academia and inequality. I really like that component of the paper.
Thank you.
So based on that, we've talked a bit about your methodology, but where would you say your paper sits in terms of discipline, and who would you be expecting to read it?
I mean, in the end, like you said, it was published in Human Relations, which is an interdisciplinary journal. They don't really care. It's in general a social science journal. And I think our paper fits in there very well because on the one hand, the main theory, equity theory, when it comes to fairness, is a social psychological theory. So, of course, it's for readers, maybe since we apply it in an organizational context, organizational behavior, which work a lot with psychological theories. On the other hand, it's a strong component of employment relations, industrial relations. We talk about union-employee management relationship, but it's also for labor economists. Economists like to talk about what is an adequate level of inequality, what is an adequate level of pay, and how do unions relate to management. So I think anything in this realm of organization, labor, and work, and for all those, it would be interesting to read.
So does this paper come from your PhD, and should we expect kind of similar work later, or what are you working on now?
It is from my PhD indeed. I mean, so these are the, let's say, 3 main chapters of my PhD that I then turned together with my supervisors, Danat and Andy, into this article. And I'm about to finish, so hopefully in the next 2 weeks I submit. Then this chapter is done. I've already started working as a postdoctoral research fellow, also in the area of work-employment relation at the Digital Futures of Work Research Center. And I continue in this area of inequalities in work. So on the one hand, I'm now researching a lot on this interplay of technology, work, and inequality together with Danat. It's nice to continue working with him. And on the other hand, continue in the area of fairness perception, because anytime we talk about fairness, it's about values. What do I value when it comes to it? So I do some work now with another postdoc on values and environmental policy support, because I'm very interested in the environmental dimension, and then the interplay of both these in the social ecological transformation. So these are the big fields I'm looking into researching now.
So I imagine that you're going to have quite a few pieces of work to come from this, especially with Digit. So I look forward to reading anything else you do, especially, you know, since I met you the first day of the PhD. It's nice to see kind of what you continue doing and what you'll do in the future. Thanks so much for doing this video with me, Felix. I know it was it's always a bit weird to kind of sit down with people you know and try to pretend that we're formal and that we don't just have banter all the time, but it was really nice talking to you.
I agree. Thanks a lot, Cheryl, for the opportunity.
Thanks for watching this video. It's been really great to start this series and to be speaking with fellow researchers about their work. If you've recently published a paper in an ABS list journal or a journal of similar style, I would love to talk to you about your most recent paper. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next video.